Upon further inspection, the Missouri defense was even better than a shutout. I'll explain what I mean coming up now on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters. I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. Well, after my previous episode, I may have accidentally caused some of the Brady Cook critics to scurry out from under their rocks. So I'm going to have to address them later in the show. First, though, I want to remind you that 5-Hour Energy fixes tired fast with zero sugar and a convenient portable size. It's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. Go to 5hourenergy.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. And first of all, by the way, I want to just point out that there was a really palpable buzz pre-game before kickoff, just before the game started. Something I had never really felt in Faurot Field before. Don't get me wrong, I felt that kind of buzz before in Faurot Field, just not before an opening game against Murray State. You could just feel the anticipation of this 2024 season. I will say, for all of my criticisms of the 12-team playoff, those games are going to be a lot of fun, and it definitely does give more programs at the kickoff of the season. They feel like they have a legitimate chance to be a part of the playoff, possibly win a national championship. That's certainly a positive thing. No question about that. And the crowd really was tremendous, I thought. Hung in there great, did a great job of making the black and gold stripes, by the way. You know, obviously I'm a diehard Mizzou fan who does 5 Missouri podcasts a week. But if I back up and think about it, if I'm a casual fan, if I just showed up at this game, maybe went with a friend or something like that, well, I got to see Missouri dominate the football game. I saw a big, energetic, fun crowd with lots of music and an enhanced sound system that wasn't deafening everyone, by the way. And I got to see a great halftime show, by the way, including the drone show and Marching Mizzou and our own featured twirler, Josie, by the way, co-motion dance alum. Just had to shout out Josie for her rookie debut there as a twirler for Mizzou. But anyway, just wanted to point out that just a real fun opening night at Faurot Field and the kind of buzz that I have not felt for an opening game that I can ever recall, quite honestly. At Faurot Field, anyway. We can talk about, hey, in St. Louis for the Illinois game, that kind of thing. But I just thought that was a lot of fun. But a part of, obviously, the buzz during the game, that Missouri defense, which plenty of question marks, plenty of NFL caliber players to replace. Got to replace the defensive coordinator. Well, can't get off to a much better start than a shutout. But really, in hindsight, I actually thought I was even more impressed with the Missouri defense, simply because basically everyone got to play, including true freshmen like Williams Winery and Nicholas Rodriguez and Cameron Keys on the defensive side. And of course, offensively, Courtney Crutchfield and James Madison got in the ball game. Jude James and Whit Hafer at tight end as well. And really, Batoon really rotated just a massive amount of players, just played a tremendous amount of guys throughout, mostly at linebacker and up front as well. But even in the secondary, you look at Toriano Pride actually led the defense with 33 snaps. Marvin Burks, the free safety. Well, I guess he played some strong end free safety. Missouri kind of mixes up their safety positioning a little bit, but regardless of safety, Marvin Burks played 26 snaps. That was second on the team. Compared that on the offensive side of the ball, well, the first string offensive line and Brady Cook played 54 snaps. So that's a really big difference. So to me, that makes the defensive performance all the more impressive. rotating in that amount of new guys, by the way, and a lot of those new guys were impressive. Of course, I definitely I pointed out Corey Flagg's excellent play on that onside kick to start the game. He stood out at different times on the defensive side of the ball too, as well. Chris McClellan was really disruptive. A lot of good stuff happening. Zion Young was in the backfield, hitting the quarterback on the play that forced an errant throw on Toriano Pride's pick six. I mean, really, the defense did just about everything right. In fact, to the point where Murray State didn't even get across the 50-yard line until about 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and they averaged less than 2 yards per play in the game. Truly doesn't get much better than that unless you consider, oh, yeah, Missouri played a ton of guys in the game too. So what that looked like so far, even though Missouri has a bunch of new guys, again, NFL guys to replace, a new defensive coordinator, that really looked like a well-prepared veteran-type group that's already meshing well. So let's hope we continue to see that on Saturday against Buffalo and beyond. So I started off my Murray State recap episode talking about Brady Cook and how, yeah, he was a little bit off on some of his deep balls in this game, but to me, it was just the margin there was so thin. I wasn't particularly worried about it, especially since last season, Brady Cook was quite good on those deep balls, especially play action, deep shots, that type of deal. But you know what? There's more disagreement in my YouTube comments than I was expecting, and just general worry about Cook than I was expecting. I'm not saying that's the majority of my listeners by any stretch of the imagination, but definitely a loud portion of my fan base for sure. And I got to be honest with you, it seems like some people who were, again, I'm going to put this bluntly here, wrong about Brady Cook last season are coming out of the woodwork, the type of fan who was maybe booing before the Kansas State game. Well, here's what really bugs me about that. It seems to me anyway that these people, in their need to be right, it seems like they're now trying to speak negativity about a Missouri player into existence. Listen, you're allowed to have doubts and questions and opinions. Some of those opinions can skew negative on occasion. We all can go that way. But to publicly try to die on the Brady Cook isn't that good hill, to me, if you're a Missouri fan, that's pretty gross. It really is. So please, by all means, if you think Brady Cook is not as good as the general fan base does, just keep that opinion to yourself and keep it off my YouTube comments, quite honestly, because I'm going to need more than just one game against Murray State where he threw maybe 2 or 3 deep balls a little too long. I'm going to need more evidence than that, especially when Cook was pretty good on those particular passes last year. If anything, I would say that his tendency to sail the ball on intermediate passes is much more concerning. The pass to Brett Norfleet, that was kind of in between Brett Norfleet, I thought, and another player that was deep of him, closer to the end zone. It looked like maybe Norfleet wasn't sure if that pass was too high or for him because he put his hands down, I thought. So again, that type of ball is a little bit more concerning to me than anything. I'm not saying Cook is beyond criticism or perfect or anything like that. I just thought, wow, the level of negativity that I saw by some of my commenters there, I was thinking, you know what? Some of these can't even be Missouri fans, right? These are just Kansas fans in disguise. This can't be real, right? At least I hope so. If that's really some of you out there, I'm going to need you to take it down a notch. So while obviously I'm on the optimistic side when it comes to Brady Cook and especially him hitting those deep balls going forward for touchdowns, I'm starting to think people are a little bit too optimistic online right now about Kewan Lacy, the freshman running back. And I liked what I saw too, but I have to throw just a little bit of cold water on that narrative, at least for 2024. Coming up here in a second. But first, fuel up with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. And I'm a big Protein Plus guy because, Well, quite frankly, I'm a big boy, and it takes a lot to satisfy this particular engine. And here's the good news: you get plenty of variety as well, with 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from. Each week, you'll always have new flavors to explore. And you can keep kitchen time to a minimum. Factor meals are ready in 2 minutes. No shopping, prepping, cooking, or cleaning up. You can't beat that. You really can't. So head to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 and use code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code LockedOnCollege50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. And passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With more than 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge victories. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. And against Murray State, Missouri was able to get 5 running backs touches and snaps in that ball game, including, of course, Nate Noel, Marcus Carroll, also Jamal Roberts, Tavoris Jones, and the true freshman Kewan Lacy, who arguably, just as a runner in that ball game, may have been the most impressive of all. And that's saying something. I think Noel and Carroll in particular definitely had their moments in that ball game. And I'll talk a little bit more about their passing game usage here a little bit later in the show. But as far as Lacy goes, boy, some Missouri fans, I was as impressed by Lacy, I think, as most people, but some Missouri fans are acting like he's a true freshman version of Oklahoma's Adrian Peterson back in the day at this point, a guy who, in my opinion, should have won the Heisman Trophy back in the day for the Sooners as a true freshman, but that's a discussion for another day. But obviously with 4 carries, just 5 carries, I should say, for 42 yards for Lacy, really impressive burst without a doubt. But I will say, I think a lot of fans are forgetting, maybe hand waving, that on his first touch as a Missouri Tiger, he picked up a nice gain, but he also fumbled the football. A Murray State defender knocked it out of his arm. Ball was put on the ground. Fortunately, Missouri was able to recover. You go back and you watch the broadcast, you see him getting a talking to from running backs coach Curtis Looper. And, well, Lacy got back in the game and obviously did fine, didn't fumble the ball. So maybe a lesson learned there from a young guy who is obviously hyped up to be in his very first Missouri game. So what I'm trying to do here is throw a bit of cold water on the 2024 expectations for Lacy. I think for 2025, maybe even as the season goes along here, maybe Lacy becomes a little bit more part of the offense in special situations and packages and plays that you would like to use for him, maybe specifically during the week that are put in. But I very much expect this is going to be a Nate Noel, Marcus Carroll experience this season for the most part. I really do. I mean, based on everything we know about Eli Drinkwitz, he wants experience at that position. And it's not just about explosiveness as a runner. It's about being a pass catcher. And I would say even more importantly, it's about pass protection, keeping your quarterback alive and out of pressure and harm's way is as important a job as there is on the football team. So That's where I think Kewan Lacy is going to come up a little bit short as a true freshman, only because that's where almost all true freshman running backs have to learn and grow, is in pass protection, big time. So let's pump the brakes a little bit on Lacy for 2024. But as for his future, he could absolutely be the Missouri featured running back as early as next season, I believe. And since I was talking about the running backs and their passing game usage, alluded to that just a little bit ago, I thought this was an interesting thing for Missouri to put on film, which is normally when teams go empty formations, and this goes all the way back to the Chase Daniel, Gary Pinkel eras. This is true for Missouri and every other team I've ever watched. Anytime you go an empty formation and there's a running back as part of that empty formation, well, generally that guy goes out to the boundary, and that's exactly what happens here. You see Marcus Carroll, number 9 for Missouri, making sure he's in an illegal formation here, pointing the referee to your left. But the point is, 9 times out of 10, heck, I'll say 99 times out of 100, that guy is an afterthought. He's not really part of the play, especially, well, Marcus Carroll's not really thought of as a pass receiving running back. And you'll watch number 2 here for the Racers, the corner on the boundary here, the defensive back. Well, he doesn't really pay a heck of a lot of attention to Marcus Carroll. In fact, he's looking back he's just backpedaling, and basically looking at Brady Cook. I mean, he's still backpedaling, while Cook is throwing him the ball here. So just a quick little 4-yard type hitch here that gains about 7-8 yards. Just very, very simple football here, that something that as a defensive coordinator, like, oh, I have to pay attention to these running backs now, because here's the thing. It wasn't just Marcus Carroll, same deal, except this time it's over to the right side of the boundary. This time it's Nate Noel is over to your right side of the screen here. And once again, look at the defensive back. He's barely even paying. He's not worried about the ball getting thrown to Carroll whatsoever. In fact, or Noel, excuse me. If anything, Noel had a lot more yards. He could have probably gotten another 4 or 5 yards here if he turns upfield, but he just steps out of bounds here. No big deal. The point here is, if 99 times out of 100, I'm telling you, the running back on the boundary there, they barely even run a pass. They barely even run a route. That may be the route that they run, and they don't even get the ball 99% of the time. So just the fact that Missouri is putting this on film here, like, hey, you better actually guard these guys, I think that's interesting. And it also shows some confidence in both guys that will throw the ball out to them, for just simple little balls here. I like that Brady gets him the ball, by the way. I don't know if this was the design or the first route, but again, the defensive back is just kind of lollygagging around here. He's not really worried about the running back to the boundary whatsoever. So defensive coordinators better take note. That's some easy yardage that Missouri is willing to take this season. And I've talked a lot about Brady Cook on the past couple episodes. Well, what about Drew Pine? How did he look as Missouri's backup in the Murray State game? Let's talk about him and some looks around the country from yesterday's action as well, how it affects Missouri. Well, I'm still keeping my same season prediction, but I'm going to alter it ever so slightly. So I'll explain that in just a second. But first, I have to admit, I got a little tired yesterday after a marathon of an all day of college football. It sounds silly, but when you're just ingesting all that amount of football, it can take it out of you a little bit to get to those late games like A&M and Notre Dame. Well, grab a 5-hour energy shot to stay alert, to watch all your favorite games, or if you stayed up late to see that intense overtime affair, for example, you stayed up late to watch UCLA and Hawaii, well, you got to take a 5-hour energy shot in the morning so you can start your day. And with zero sugar, a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5-hour energy website has flavors galore like watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, and more. There is a flavor for everyone. You got to try them all. So if you go to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5-Hour Energy product today. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. And once the ball game was well in hand, Brady Cook handed the reins over to Drew Pyne, and Pyne was impressive. He looked capable, more than capable, really, as a backup quarterback this season for Missouri. So that's a very, very good thing. Now, lest you think there's any type of quarterback controversy here, let's not go crazy. Pyne, his numbers are impressive, 10 of 11 for 82 yards. But all of this stuff requires, all of football analysis, quite honestly, requires a ton of context. And what you saw Pyne doing was basically running a whole bunch of run-pass options type plays. And he had a nice throw down the sidelines, by the way, to Courtney Crutchfield that was incomplete on a free play. So that could have made his numbers look even better potentially. But for the most part, there weren't a lot of downfield throws from Pyne. But what I was impressed by is he just managed the offense well. And seemingly, whenever he would pull the ball on those run pass options and actually throw the ball to usually a slant guy on his left side, it seemed like a pretty good decision more often than not. So an impressive debut from Pyne, just in terms of, this guy looks like he's got command of the offense. He looks like a veteran player. But if anybody's going so crazy as to think there's a quarterback controversy, I wouldn't go that far, at least not based on what I saw on Saturday. Don't get me wrong, I haven't seen anybody saying that. I'm just trying to head off any potential kookiness at the pass. Now, one of Brady Cook's deep balls that was the absolute closest to being connected for a touchdown was one to Marquise Johnson in the first quarter. But the good news, in my opinion, is that even though that ball didn't connect, that wasn't the end of Marquise Johnson's night whatsoever. In fact, he had 4 catches for 41 yards, including quite a few just simple comeback routes, hitch routes that are certainly going to be open this season. As fast as Johnson is, as much one-on-one coverage as he's often going to be getting with Luther Burden on the field, you got to give up something. And that something, more often than not, is probably going to be a cushion to Marquise Johnson. So the fact that, again, we're at least putting that on film, similar to what we did with those boundary passes to the running back out of empty formations there. Similarly here, if we just show that Speedy Johnson is willing to actually run a quick 8-yard hitch, that kind of thing, that's going to make him all the more difficult to cover on the deep balls as well. So all offseason, I've been hoping Marquise Johnson would expand his route tree a little bit. Looks like we're in the early budding stages of that right now. And around the country, notably, as I'm sure all of you saw and probably most of you watched, Vanderbilt took down Virginia Tech, a team that, well, some of my Locked On colleagues thought was a sleeper to potentially win the ACC. And right now, the ACC not looking so hot. Florida State already has a loss. Clemson got beat down by Georgia yesterday. That was really my one gambling pick this week, was giving the points with Georgia, and also Missouri and Murray State the under as well. What can I say except you're welcome for that 2-0 start. Also, Texas A&M with a loss at home to Notre Dame. I was on the correct side of that one as well. But notably, I would say, what does this mean? I think it means Vanderbilt, at least from what I could see, you always want to be careful to overreact to week one, without a doubt. But this tells me, I would say, that the Commodores are probably further along than most of us would have expected. So if you're Missouri right now, if you're Eli Drinkwitz, you're telling your team, hey, watch out for Vanderbilt. Don't just think that this is going to be a rollover win, because maybe the Hokies thought that in Nashville, And I don't know, it looked like a lot of probably 25,000 disappointed Virginia Tech fans down in the Music City. But also Texas A&M losing at home to Notre Dame. Not a huge surprise to me. I really feel like Mike Elko will probably be a good coach for Texas A&M in the long run, as long as there's enough patience in College Station. But first week against the Fighting Irish, year 3 with Marcus Freeman, that just seemed like too tough of a deal to me. Also, Alabama rolling against Western Kentucky in the first outing of Kalen DeBoer in his era. South Carolina, frankly, was fortunate to escape with a victory at home against Old Dominion. A late fumble deep in its own territory by Old Dominion really sank them for sure, led to then a Carolina touchdown that ended the game. It was then a Carolina 4-point lead after being a 3-point deficit. Gamecocks were fortunate to escape there. So really, I think I'm going to stick with my 11-1 prediction for the Tigers after this week. But my whole thing of, well, you know what? I think we're going to win in Tuscaloosa and lose a weird one perhaps to somebody like South Carolina. I think I'm going to come off that now. I'm going to stick with 11-1, but go more conventional and say, you know what? I think conventional wisdom is probably right here and say the Tigers lose in Tuscaloosa. But I can't say we're going to lose in South Carolina anymore after week 1, how both Missouri and the Gamecocks looked. And by the way, Florida dominated by the Hurricanes and Cam Ward. This was probably my worst take of the entire week. I thought Florida had a good shot to pull off the upset there. Not even close. Cam Ward, the Miami quarterback, looked like the real deal. And, well, Billy Napier's hot seat just got on full blast for sure. So that's about it for around the country in terms of games that affect Missouri. I think the Tigers look really strong. You look around the league, you look around the country. I think Missouri had about as impressive of a week 1 performance as there was in college football, though you have to say the same thing about Alabama, quite honestly. So any idea, I think, that the Crimson Tide were going to take a huge step back this season, well, we're going to have to pump the brakes on that. If anything, DeBoer might actually make Jalen Milroe and that Alabama offense better. The defense, that's going to be a little bit more of a question with Caleb Downs transferring to Ohio State and some other departures for the Tide. But still, so far, so good down in Alabama. As far as College Station goes, you know what? Missouri got to be considered a favorite there now, I think. Vanderbilt, on the other hand, that's starting to look like a scarier game. Certainly one Missouri expects to win, but you can't mark it down in permanent mark just yet. That's for darn sure. But you know what? You got to mark down Locked On Mizzou on your schedule in permanent mark on the regular for this season. Coming up this season, I'm thinking Monday through Thursday, and then post-game shows on Saturday or Sundays, probably looking like the schedule. What's the point of the Friday shows, right? People are off working, they're at happy hour, doing all kinds of stuff. Let's go Monday through Thursday and then a weekend show. That's what I'm thinking the schedule is going to be this season. So until Monday, I am John Miller, and this has been Locked on Mizzou.